So React has a library called React Router. AngularJS has a component router. Now we are talking about Blazor Router. What is a router anyway? And why is it such an essential? To understand that, let's create some static traditional HTML pages. Here I have a folder named non-SPA, and SPA here stands for single page application. Within it, we have two pages, index.html and page2.html. Within each page, there is a header and a hyperlink to the other one. Now, what happens when I load it in browser? I can go back and forth in between those two pages, right? Let's get to understand what happened there. We have a browser on our local box, and there is a website on the internet. The website usually hosts the HTML, JavaScript, images, and backend APIs, blah blah blah. When we go to a website, we put the address in the address bar, and the browser will send a request for us. The request will eventually reach the targeted website. There were a lot of details happened under the hood, but this process that pointing the request to the target website is routing. Now the server gets the request, and what did it do? It returns the HTML and JavaScript, and then the browser rendered it. That's basically how we see a page. If we request a different page, it repeats the process. Let's check it out in the browser. Only this time, I want you to focus on the network tab. And that is traditionally how it works. The routing is transparent to the web developers. The things are slightly different in SPA. It will start the same, and you always ask for the same page, index.html for example. And by the way, it's going to be the default documentation name for most of the web servers. That makes it optional. At the moment the web server gets the request, the traditional routing is done. And then what will happen is everything that is on the client side will be downloaded into the browser as a whole package. Now when you switch pages in the browser, it's going to be DOM rewriting. But there's no traffic to the server again. Let's see it in the browser. While I am switching from page to page, the DOM changes with it. The content will look different, but there's no network traffic to the backend. Okay, but what has this to do with routing? From the user's perspective, when I get into a new page, that is a new URL. So besides DOM updating, the application is now responsible for updating the URL in the browser. And then when it is the other way around, meaning the user typing some concrete URL, for example, /counter, it is also the application's responsibility to understand the URL and render the counter portion of the application. Every SPA will have these new responsibilities, and they are usually abstracted and handled by a specific component. And in Blazor Web Assembly, that component is called the router. Since it's already there, we don't need to write the router, but we do need to learn how to use it, and that's coming up next. Guess, what is the most important job of a router? Routing. Let's take a look at that. I'll start by creating a new page of Fishcard. For the user to access Fishcard, we firstly need to let the router know which URL is mapped to it, and we use page directive for it. For example, /Fishcard is reserved for Fishcard page. Let's add a header to mark it. And that's it. Let's try build and run it. Oops, something went wrong. What's the error message? The type name frontend doesn't exist in the type Fishcard. Oh, the newly created Fishcard.razor actually generates a Fishcard class. but my project is named fishcard.frontend, and the default namespace is fishcard.frontend. And the conflict is that it doesn't understand whether Fishcard is a class name or is it a portion of the namespace. So I'm going to rename the newly created class to something else. It could be almost anything except Fishcard. Now it builds. To access the Fishcard page, we need to type in the URL. Oh, hello, Fishcard. Now, think about that a little bit. This is the router. Understand the path of Fishcard and load the DOM for the Fishcard page. Isn't that easy? Next, let's take a look at the NavLink component. That is the component used in the navigation bar to the left of the page. We want to append an item of Fishcard, and here's how to do it. In this NavMenu component, we have 3 NavLinks already. I'm going to copy an existing one, update the href, and I'll give it a text of Fishcard. Now when we run it, the Fishcard item showed up, and click on it, navigate us to Hello Fishcard. We go to the counter, come back. Now pay attention to the change in the address bar for the URL, and also the capability to go back and forth in the browsing history. Okay, NavLink. You use that to call into the router to go back and forth to different pages of the application. Another way to use a router in Blazor, of course, is to write C# code. Blazor provides a class called NavigationManager. There is an instance in the project already, so that you can directly inject the NavigationManager into your classes. Here, let me put up some basic code and I'll explain them. The inject directive allows me to inject an instance of a service. The first parameter is going to be the type of the service. For example, it's a NavigationManager here. And then we give it a name for the injected instance. And I'm calling it underscore NavigationManager. That's all we need to know at this moment. I plan to talk more about the service injection in Blazor in a separate video. And when it's available, there will be a link to the upper right corner. Next, the code directive carves out an area for C# code to run inside the Blazor page. There, I create a method, goToFishcard, and the goToFishcard calls the NavigationManager.NavigateTo method, and the parameter matches the route to the Fishcard page. And then, in the HTML section, I added a div. There, I add another directive, onClick. So when the user clicks the content of it, the C# method goToFishcard will be invoked. Let's see it in action. Here I clicked it. Okay, you notice the content of the page has changed. The NavLink for the Fishcard is also highlighted automatically. URL is updated as well as the browsing history, and that's how to use a router by NavigationManager. So 3 common ways to use a router: by URL, by NavLink, and by code. Those are the fundamentals. And now we're going to talk about something very, very close to the routing, and that is parameter. Let's see what we have implemented in Fishcard today. You go to fishcard.codewizard.net/summon. You got the result of the summon. And then you can share the URL with a friend or a colleague. I don't know why, but you can share it. And they're going to see the same result as you do. That's usually called a deep link. But what does it have to do with our topic today, the routing? You notice we don't have a summon page. Summon is a keyword for search, and we treated it as a parameter, and we searched it when the user landed. Question is, how does the router know? Well, coming back to our version of Fishcard, This is how you add a route parameter. Follow the page directive. This is called a route template. Wherever you want a parameter, you put the fragment in the curly bracket. The text inside it, fish name, will become the parameter name. And then in the code section, you bind it to a property. You need to decorate the property with the parameter attribute, and then the property of the fish name can be used. Let's put a text up there. There is a fish named fish name. Let's try that. /Fishcard /tuna. Let's try tuna. And there's the fish named tuna. In this instance, the fish card is part of the route, and tuna is the value of a route parameter. Now let's see how can we hit it by NavLink. It is actually deadly simple. You just give the value to the href. Let's have a shark. Here we go. Fishcard /shark, and there's a fish named shark. Two things I think worth mention to a route parameter. You could constrain the type of the parameter, and it could be optional. Well, only if it is the last one though. Let's create another parameter and call it weight. And then we update the route template. After the colon, we are constraining weight to be the type of double. And we make it optional. The supported type for the constraint is limited. There's an official document for that, and I'll put the link in the description below. Let's also display the weight on the page. Well, since the parameter is optional, at the very beginning there's no value, but the page is loaded successfully. Let's try give it a value of 10. And we have a 10-pound baby shark. Well, how about a 10 pound and a half? It will bloat it. Why? The constraint is double, and there's no problem for that. What is causing the error is actually a routing rule. That if a dot exists in the last section of a URL, the host is going to treat it as if we are requesting for the file. In this instance, it is looking for a file named 10.5 under the folder Fishcard. If you are coding with me, try flip the order for the weight and the name of the fish in the routing template, and it will work that way. Here, I'm going to introduce you another type of parameter that's going to work, and that is query parameter. A query parameter are those key value pairs after the question mark in the URL. Blazor router supports it, and let's see how can we get the value. First, let's decorate the property of weight with another attribute, supply parameter from query. I'm going to give it the name of W, and that's going to be used as the key. That is actually optional, and when it is not provided, the key would be the name of the property. Since weight will be bound to a query parameter, we'll need to remove it from the route template. Let's meet a shark. And the shark weighs 256.33 pounds. We did it through the URL. Now let's see how can we do the same through the code. We already know it's going to be the NavigationManager. We could actually build the query string manually. It is a little bit tedious. You need to making sure the key value pair matches with each other. There's that leading question mark to deal with. And don't forget URL encoding. So I wish the Navigation Manager could provide some existing method that will help. There's not too much in the class by itself, but we do have two extension methods here. Specifically, one of them accepts a string URI with the parameters in a dictionary. That could be handy. Let's see how can we update the code in the index to build a proper URL with query parameters. The URI builder class usually is very helpful to manipulate part of the URL. For example, here we start with the base URL. And we use the Fishcard/Salmon as a path to form up the target URL. Then we use the extension method which is found to append the query parameters. It is this overload which takes in a URL as the first parameter and then a dictionary for the key value pairs. For me, the dictionary is way easier than manipulating the string. It is less error prone, and I don't have to deal with the tedious part mentioned earlier. The key for the parameter is W, and the value, let's say 200.1 pound. Now again, we call navigate2 given the full URI. Actually, I'll do crab then salmon. Now this time, when I click go to Fishcard, I have a crab weighs 200 pounds. Yeah, I don't think you should eat it in one meal. Okay, today we built a Fishcard homepage and we learned how to route the traffic to it. We did it by URL, we did it by NavLink, and we did it by code through the NavigationManager. We also picked up how to use the route parameter, the query parameter, so that in the future, we will know how to build a page with deep link. I hope you enjoyed it. Give me a thumb up to let me know. Subscribe if you want to hear more about the topic. Now keep coding, keep improving, and I will see you in the next one. Until then, take care. React has a library called React. In the HTML section, I added a dev. Here, right, add a dev. You put the fragment into a curly brackets. And we use the flashcard / it's Fishcard.